Good evening, everyone. Charlotte here from Enriching Environments for Top Tip Tuesday on Tuesday, the 19th, I believe, of March. And something is happening here, which is bothering me. There we go. On my screen, I don't know what's happening. Hello, everyone who's joining. Instagram is telling me all types of things and I can't make it go away. It's flashing up things of things need to do. It's got new features on the live. And now, okay, please, okay, it's finished now. Hi everyone, thanks for joining straight away. And we are talking about creativity this evening. And for those who come and speak with me every Tuesday, you'll see that I've had my house redecorated. We repainted last Thursday, so I've got bright yellow. You can't really see in the evening, but it's bright yellow behind me. Hi Ivana, hi everyone who's joining. So yeah, we've redecorated. Hi Sama. I've redecorated, so then that's why you can see my bright yellow wall behind me, and I've painted the children's bedroom wall yellow as well, but a paler yellow. And then the final stage of the refurbishments is I'm putting a climbing wall on the children's bedroom wall, so within the next couple of weeks, and then I'll be able to put some stories on the wall about that. I'm getting a loft bed for Harry so he can go above, and then Olivia will go on her floor mattress below. And they both really love climbing and really love monkey bars. So what I want to do, my ideal vision is climbing wall up one side and then monkey bars across the ceiling, so they can do full like gross motor in the bedroom. I'm a bit of a gross motor fiend, and they love climbing and they love swinging as well, and it's so good for their upper body strength. So that is my vision. Please excuse my croaky throat. I've got a bit of croaky throat. Harry's been a bit poorly. Hi Ivana. Harry's been a bit poorly, so wasn't at school today, so it's been a bit of a rough few nights in our household. This evening we are talking about creativity in the young child. And this came about because in the toddler community, which I'm guiding at the moment, we did some really beautiful cards for Mother's Day, and which was here in the UAE. For those who aren't watching in the UAE, our Mother's Day was on Monday, just yesterday. And so the children prepared some really beautiful cards for the mothers, and we were trying to make it as child-led as possible. And you can see when there's child-led art, and you can see when there's not child-led art, and the difference between it. And so we really intentionally created the activity to tie in with the children's interest at the moment, which is gluing. They're suddenly all into gluing. These are toddlers, really into gluing, and we'll talk about the importance of things like gluing a bit later. But it got me thinking, like, creativity in the young child. So much of what we see and is designed, thanks Ivana, happy Mother's Day to you too, is designed for young children's creativity. It doesn't actually really support them and meet them where they are. So we are really focused in Montessori about making sure that any artwork we do is really a reflection of the children's skills, is a reflection of their creative expression. That's really important to us. Summer just asked a great question. Are you not afraid they would fall? That's talking about the climbing wall and the monkey bars. They will probably fall, and that's a good thing. Remember, mine are much older than Tame. Summer, mine are 5 and 7. So every single bump that's can happen has happened already. We've had hospital visits and cut open chins and bangs on the head and all of those scary things. So hi David. So they're really strong, but there's going to be I'm going to have mats underneath as well, because I've got a really big Persian rug. So what I'll do is I'll put like squishy mats underneath the rug as well, so even if they do fall. But we'll see how it goes. I'll see you at school every day, so I'll let you know how the climbing wall goes. So yeah, creativity in the young child. It's a really interesting topic with Dr. Montessori, because any of you who've read Dr. Montessori's work, you'll know that she doesn't she doesn't specifically mention how to foster creativity in the young child. And this is a real area of debate for us Montessorians and non-Montessorians as well, because they're like, oh, she didn't speak about creativity, she didn't speak about fostering it, she didn't speak about specific activities. And what we do know is that Dr. Montessori was really, really clear on the child in the first 6 years of life having real life experiences, concrete first-hand experiences. And it is her belief, and certainly something that I've seen with all the children I've worked with and with my own children, that first-hand experiences in nature foster imagination and creativity more than anything else we can give them. And in Montessori, we're really, really keen on keeping things, real experiences in the first 6 years of life. So we don't do princesses and unicorns and mythical creatures and fantasy stories in the first 6 years. And that's because, again, the belief is that they're forming the whole personality in the first 6 years of life. And so we need to give them concrete, real life experiences. Because if we think about mythical creatures and unicorns and princesses and princes and all of those things, in the Disney sense, I mean, that is an adult's idea of creativity. That's an adult's idea of imagination. That's not a child's idea of imagination. That's something that an adult's created. Really, what's a child's imagination is what they put down on paper as their artwork, what songs they sing, what they do with percussion instruments, what they do when they're squeezing Play-Doh. That is a child's creative expression and their imagination, what's coming out of their imagination, not something that we've imposed on them, like singing kangaroos or, unicorns or whatever it might be. So that's a really, really important distinction to make. And that's the other reason why we avoid things like superheroes and stuff in the first 6 years of life. One, it's not something that they can handle cognitively. And often aggressive behavior can come from this, the superheroes and all of that, Batman, Spider-Man, all of that stuff. When it's given too soon, it can encourage aggression. And also, it's all fantasy. It's not real. And the child gets more richness and needs these concrete, real, first-hand experiences in nature that give them more depth of creativity, more imagination than anything else that we can offer them that's man-made. So think of nature, think of real experiences. Sitting under a tree, lying under a tree and looking through the branches, up at the sunlight and the blue sky above, with your child, talking about that, or not saying anything, just lying with them and letting them feel the wind on their face, fosters more creativity and imagination than anything else that we can give them or manufacture or fabricate for them. So that's the first really important point to consider, that it's not something we need to put in them. It's in there innately, and what we offer in terms of real first-hand experiences, particularly in nature, is what their foundation is of creativity and imagination. Excuse me. And we're going to talk about all areas of creativity this evening. To me, creativity is not just art, it's Play-Doh, it's gluing, so collage, it's cutting, it's music, so musical instruments, percussion instruments, it's song, it's dance. All of those come under, for me, the umbrella of creative expression, because it's the child expressing themselves in a way that they cannot yet do with words, or they cannot yet do, in the written form. And if we look at someone interesting, another alternative education, like Rudolf Steiner, he was very clear that reading and writing should come later, because there's sort of like a portal that a child goes through when they start reading and writing, so they lose a certain amount of their creativity, as it were, once they've gone into that stage of reading and writing. Their brain's at a different stage of development, and they lose that sort of magic of the early years, as it were, once they can do that. So creative expression is really, really important in the early years. They put things down on paper, they make things in Play-Doh, they dance, they move their bodies, they stick, they cut, things that they don't yet have the words to. And there's things that they cannot write down. Obviously, they can't write yet. So creative expression is really, really important in the early years. As I say, it comes from their imagination. First-hand experience in nature are the best. And Dr. Montessori believed that it grew naturally from within. So she didn't give any specific exercises or activities or materials for creativity, as she did with all of the other of her incredible materials that she prepared for, she specifically designed for an environment. let me just look at my notes and take a drink of water. Sorry about my croaky throat. It's really croaky, isn't it? Hi, Brenda. Hello, everyone who's joined. Sorry, I haven't kept up with you all. So let me talk about why creativity is so important. So not only is it, as I said, a way of expressing themselves. When a child is angry, when a child is upset, when they've had a disagreement with a friend, when they've just had a disagreement with you, their parent, when they need calming, offering them creativity after an upset is so healing for them. It's releasing for them. They're not keeping that stress in their body, particularly for a child who's been really, really het up, really, really upset, or a child that needs to be calmed. I'm thinking about, at the beginning of term in the toddler community, a child who's not yet settled and into the environment. A really wonderful thing that we can do is offer them to work with some Play-Doh or draw a picture or do a painting that naturally is going to bring them back into their body, going to ground them and going to calm them. And then we can also offer them to prepare something for their mum or their dad or whoever they're missing. But the main thing is, is it's really, really grounding them and centering them and calming them, because all creativity for children is process. It's process driven, not outcome driven. We want to focus on offering them different experiences rather than thinking of any outcome. What they are experiencing in that moment, what they are expressing in that moment is more important, hi Summer, than anything else that we can say in terms of praise, or we can get them to do. We can say stick this here or stick this there. So I think it's all process driven. Young children live in the present moment. They have no concept of time below the age of 6. So when they are creating a piece of art or Play-Doh or whatever it might be, they're just being in that moment, during that process at that moment. It's so incredible for concentration. I've just been preparing the photos for my toddler community for the end of term, and and it's so incredible. So many videos and photos I have on there. You can see the concentration on the children's faces when they're gluing, when they're drawing, when they're doing Play-Doh, when they're playing music, when they're singing and dancing. And it's so vital for concentration. They're helping each other cut with scissors, they're cutting Play-Doh, they're gluing. They really, really got into gluing this month. And it takes so much fine motor. A little tip for gluing is use liquid glue rather than a Pritt stick, rather than stick glue. And that's because you've got so many more skills. It's easier to use liquid glue because it's the motion of painting, but it uses a lot more skills because you've got to have that precision. You've got small little bits of paper for them to stick, and that's a really definite skill. And they've got to paint each one of those individually, then press it on. That's more challenging and requires a lot of concentration, and it's something that they can do more easily because it's so the action of painting. So use liquid glue. You can put it in those little tiny jam jars you get, the Bon Maman, the Sandal full ones. Put a little bit in a tiny jam jar, mini jam jar, with a small brush set up on a tray, and that's your glue tray. And as they get, most children will start to be able to use scissors from, hi there, everyone who's joining, from around the age of 2. So they can cut their own, you can cut paper into strips, and they can cut strips and then glue them onto a piece of paper. And the concentration involved in that is phenomenal. The fine skills involved, the hand-eye coordination, and it's a whole sequence that's just gluing, but anything that you're doing with creativity, it fosters so much concentration and really just brings the child an opportunity to express themselves in a way that they just don't have the words to express themselves in the early years, and they don't have any other way of expressing themselves other than what they're creating in that moment. So allow them the space and the time to create as much as they want to. And as we come to that, excuse me for my cough, as we come to that, in terms of making what we provide for creativity. So really, really simply, just think of 5 things. A set of wooden percussion instruments. Doesn't need to be fancy, just 3 or 4. They're really easy to get online now, actually. Wooden percussion instruments. So an easel's really good. Obviously, there's the IKEA one. It's quite light and quite tall, so you can cut the legs off. Also, I have a friend who draped sort of like a sandbag over the middle bridge bit, so then it wouldn't fly away the whole time. If you've got any outdoor space, you've got a terrace, you've got a garden, just a tiny little balcony, put the easel outside and offer opportunities for creativity outside as much as possible. There's something about painting, think of all of the great painters and then painting outside. It's offers so much more in terms of an enriching experience to offer creativity outside. So if you've got space and you can put a table outside for creativity, great. If you've got just a little balcony, pop the easel on there. Or if you don't have any outdoor space at all, make sure the artwork is right by the window. Table by the window, easel by the window as much as possible, so that they can see the natural light. They can open the window and they can feel the wind on them. They can feel nature whilst they're creating whatever they are creating. So those are your pointers. So an easel, you can get the IKEA one, cut the legs down so it doesn't fall over so easily, and so it's a better height for a toddler. Art outside if you can manage it. Liquid glue instead of stick glue. And with painting, you can start off with one colour, one of the primary colours, and then move on to more than one colour, to mixing. But bear in mind is that children don't have a concept of mixing like we do to make a pretty colour, as it were. That's very much an experience for them. So if you give them more than 2 colours, they're going to mix them all together and it's going to end up like sludge, which might be fine, but it's not. They won't be able to handle lots of colours. So start with 1 and then progress to 2, and then you can progress to 3. But bear in mind that they don't mix colour in the way that we do. It's just literally an experience for them, rather than the outcome, as we said. Everything should be simple, ordered and accessible, like everything else. So at their height, sit down, have a look around. Have they got a few crayons at their height? Have they got the way I would do artwork when they were little is I'd have a clipboard with a few sheets of paper on it, and then they could take that outside onto our terrace, and sit at the table and do it. Or they'd have an easel outside with the chalk, and there's the whiteboard on the other side, or painting on the other side. So it's opportunities at their height. A couple of crayons, some Play-Doh. They can do their little sculpting, and with the Play-Doh you can use a wooden knife. You can use a rolling pin. They can cut out shapes. And cutting Play-Doh is a really interesting texture for them as well. So when they're first getting into cutting, and there'll be a stage often where they can cut, but they don't yet have the motor skills to the coordination, to hold one piece of paper still in one hand to be able to cut with the other in the right way. So Play-Doh is a good texture to do that, because obviously just a lump of Play-Doh that they squeeze and then cut like that. It's a satisfying texture, and it's not so wobbly as a piece of paper. So that's a nice little tip, and it's a really interesting texture because they've got to use more force to cut through it. So it's really it's just an interesting experience for them. What else can I tell you? Yeah, it's really interesting also keeping your child's drawings and paintings, but particularly drawings, because the initial mark making, hi everyone, the initial mark making that they do. And some children can start, you can put a clipboard with a few pieces of paper and a crayon. From when they're sitting, some children will mark make by accident and then realize it makes a mark and then intentionally do it. Some children at that age are still mouthing everything. So for those children, you want to just hold off a little bit more with crayons and things like that. But it depends your child. Every child is different. Some children, like Harry, started mark making, I think about 7-8 months old, quite young. But other children will be still mouthing everything until about 18 months. So you won't be able to necessarily offer, Play-Doh and crayons and paint and things like that if they're if they're putting everything in their mouth, if they're really oral like that. And there's nothing wrong with that. Every child's different. Some children are more oral than others for a much longer period. So that's just the way it is. So simple, ordered and accessible. Percussion instruments, gluing, crayons on a clipboard, an easel, pop one outside if you can, or on the terrace or by the window. What else have I got on my list? Play-Doh, and lots of opportunities for dance. Dance with them yourselves, put on some crazy music and dance, put on opera and dance, put on ballet and dance, put on hip-hop, clean versions and dance, put on everything, put on music from your culture, music from your grandparents' culture, everything from every single world music experience, every single music experience you can offer. All of this is going to bring forth from your child that creativity. It's all about offering experiences. When you get into painting, start, as I said, with one colour and then move to two, and then think about different textures of paper for painting. Think about different textures of paint. So acrylic has some really, really beautiful effects. Watercolours, and again, start with one watercolour as it ends up with like a sludgy brown mess. But think about these different, gouache also is a really nice texture. You can do oils when they're a bit older. Once they get to about 4, they could do charcoals as well, pastels, lots and lots of different experiences. It doesn't need to be complicated, but different experiences on different papers and different textures, different mediums. That's what's really interesting for a child, because they are finding the different ways that they can make the different shapes, the different flow, and it's all improving their wrist flexibility for writing. It's all improving their pencil grip, their lightness of touch. When a child starts writing, the lightness of touch is really, really important. The learning cursive, and those are flowing letters, curly flowing letters. And so all the circles that you see and swirls and lines that you see young children, toddlers doing, this is so important, because this is the foundation for writing. So you want nice big bits of paper. The IKEA easel's good because it's huge. And you want to encourage your child to do really, really big movements. I mean, not that you need to tell them to do that. What I mean is having nice big bits of paper so that they can do that, those big swirling movements, because that's all going to come in later. This is all laying the foundation for writing later. So creativity is so, so, so important for them emotionally, for fine motor. Obviously, dancing is great for gross motor. Concentration, patience, hand-eye coordination. It's all there. And I think the most important reason, it speaks to our soul, doesn't it, being creative in this way. It's what makes us unique as humans amongst animals, amongst mammals. Our desire to create. This is something unique to us as a species, and it's something that we can foster and nurture in the early years. Really, really, hi there, everyone who's joining. We can foster this so well in the early years by just offering different experiences and allowing them to do what it is they do. We don't say, let's draw a tree or let's draw a horse or what have you. We literally offer the materials, simple, ordered, accessible, at their height and only what they can handle. So if they're going to do painting, have a wet cloth nearby, offer one colour to start with, and then make sure you've got your escape route in mind of how they're going to get to the bathroom to wash their hands, because it's going to get everywhere if they're little. And we don't want to interrupt when they're doing that, so we need to make the setup as simple as possible. So once they finish painting, we can take them to the bathroom. Or if you're doing it outside, you could have a little bit of hand washing outside. I always have a cloth or a flannel on the easel. That's at home and in the toddler community at school, just so that first wipe of the fingers when it's all over their hands. Some children straight away will paint their hand and then put the hand on there, or paint their hand and look at their hand and then put their hand in their face. So just make sure you've got a wet cloth or two around so that those initial spills can be taken care of without too much of a freak out when they start putting their hands all over the wall, which will totally happen. And they'll draw on the wall, and they'll write on the wall, and they'll write on the floor, and they'll write all over your furniture, particularly the antique stuff they're going to write all over. but it's all part of the creative expression. So it's simple, ordered, accessible, have what they need at their height. And particularly for the toddler age, this is more important than anything we can offer them academically or learning colours or anything else. Creativity is so important in the toddler years. This is them expressing themselves before they can speak fluently, before that they can write, before that they've got logical thought in sequence. This is such a rich age and a golden age of creativity in the early years, particularly the toddler years, because they want to say so much and they often don't have the words, which is why we see so much physical behaviour from toddlers, because they don't have the language that they need. So offer them creativity as an outlet for that. And it's just really wonderful to see that progress. And you want to keep everything as well. Until after years and years, you'll have boxes and boxes and boxes of paintings, which I do in my tiny flat. Thank you so much for joining me. Excuse me for my croaky throat. I'm sorry. I think I'm going to have to sign off because my throat's really sore. Thank you so much for joining me. If you have any questions, ask me now. Hi. Aliyah, I just saw you joined. Hi, Manoon. Hi, Ramya. Hi, Boss Baby, My Little World. Joined. So lots of people, Safia joined, Johanna joined. Thank you so much for joining me. If you have any questions, do not hesitate to DM me as ever. Thank you so much for joining, and I'll see you again next week for Top Tip Tuesday on Instagram Live. This has been all about creativity in the young child, and leaving you with our 3 points for this evening. One is creativity is a vital part of expression. Thank you, Jenny. Vital part of self-expression in the early years. We want to offer experiences that are rich and simple. We want a simple, ordered, accessible environment so they can get what they need. We recognize that creativity is not just artwork, it's also music and dance and Play-Doh and gluing. So offer a simple range of all of those things. Offer opportunities to do creativity outside. If you've got an outside space, if you're lucky enough to have a garden or a terrace or a balcony, offer that space to sing and dance and move and paint and Play-Doh and glue and all of those things. Pleasure, Jenny. Thank you so much for joining. And what else did I want to say? Yes, creativity and imagination is really fostered in the early years. So think about offering first-hand experiences in nature above anything else. And the imagination develops naturally through first-hand experiences in nature. We don't need to offer our version of imagination and fantasy and mythical creatures in the early years. All of that imagination comes between 6 and 12. That's when all of that comes in. And superheroes and things like that sort of as a natural stage of development between 6 and 12. But in the early years, keep it as real, as concrete first-hand experiences as is possible. And I think that's all I wanted to say. Textures with painting. With painting, lots of different textures, paints, papers, experiences, one colour, then 2 colours. Start with the primary colours. That's really interesting to do as well. Thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you next week for Top Tip Tuesday. Thank you so much, and have a beautiful week. Bye-bye.